Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to episode 8 of Raised Red Living Blue. I'm Sloan Roden, joined by
Jason Will.
How are you this week?
So good. Major gratitude.
Hit me with it.
It's my first Smith Lake house under contract. Woo! So I have sold a lot and now have a house under contract, building up a little database of buyers. So I'm really, really excited, and we don't plug ourselves enough. But SmithLakeActiveListings.com. Get there. There's all the active listings on Smith Lake right there. And we have kid-free weekend this weekend. So you know what that means.
Kid-free weekend.
That's going to be an empty house. Like kids, Diana's dad, the father-in-law that lives with us is going to be out. So
it's going to be like two teenagers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Not sure what to do.
I know.
Okay.
I know. We don't want to go there though, do we?
Nope, we don't.
What about you? What's going on with you?
Mine's a little darker.
What happened?
My head's in a funky place this week. My mom's second husband, who for a long time I just would refer to as my stepdad, his funeral is tomorrow. And so I'm in this weird headspace around it. I'm going to go pay my respects because I find that's important. But yeah, he was a big part of my life. They were married for 10 years. They got married when I was 15. They built a house together. It was the house that was zoned for Spain Park. It was the house that we had prom pictures at, and people came and spent the night after prom. And my senior year, kind of like the guy I referred to as my high school boyfriend, he after school would go to my house every day and would already be there when I would get home from cheerleading practice. And I had another buddy of mine. I got home from cheerleading practice one day and he's just at the kitchen table with my mom hanging out. So it was just this very, very special place. And mom and his name is Larry. Larry divorced right around the time Steph and I got together. Mm-hmm. And that was actually, she told me the same day that I told her about Steph. I was like, oh, here's my end. You're going through something. I'm going through something.
Interesting.
Wasn't received as I
had
hoped. And mom had made some statements. And in reflection, I'm not sure if this would have been true or not, or if this was her projecting. But essentially was Larry never would have accepted this. And it's that was weird. So then I don't know. I don't know what you do with a step parent when your parent and them gets divorced. So then especially kind of with that other layer, I just also completely cut ties. So it's this person that I've not had a relationship with in a long time, but who was a very pivotal part of my life. And it's so that's what's going on with me.
That's freaking heavy.
Sorry. I'm ready.
Wow. All right. I don't know how we recover from that. Just kidding.
Okay, let's take a break and then we will get into what we're going to discuss today.
We got a lot to discuss today. So yeah, let's stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, let's get into, I guess, our primary topic for today, which is the LA wildfires. I didn't know. I mean, you have so much empathy.
Thank you.
I feel like you have this big heart, and so I'm sure you've been affected by this.
Yeah, like a lot of things, it is all over my algorithm.
Yeah. It
is hard to watch, but then there's these hopeful moments, any video that there is about the super scoopers, the Canadian planes that get water out of the Pacific Ocean, and people are putting them to the Top Gun music, and I will watch the same clip 4 times before I keep going. So there's these moments of hope and inspiration in the middle of despair, which I think is important for all tragedy. I was in Tuscaloosa for the April 27th tornado back in 2011. But lucky for me, I was graduating. So really all that affected me was I didn't have to take exams and I moved out of my house. I didn't have to stay in Tuscaloosa. And that's one type of devastation.
But you knew
and this
people,
is,
I'm assuming, that lost their places to live.
yes.
And what does somebody do in that? Do they move in with friends? They do like remote learning? I mean, like this is just like totally upended people's lives. I just can't imagine like wondering where you're going to sleep at night.
And the internet can be so cruel because one side of it is, oh, poor rich people, they've lost their home, they can build another. And it's like, there was this great quote. I feel like,
so poor rich people, but everybody wants to be rich. We've got I think, billionaire class run political leadership that's about to be inaugurated.
Yeah.
And that's the whole premise behind the Republican Party is like, hey, we're rich, you can be rich too.
Yeah, but it's like when you lose your home, this was really pretty, a really beautiful post. I follow this chef Molly Boz at Molly Boz on Instagram. She worked for Bon Appetit. She's gone out on her own. Her husband is an architect and designed their home. And it goes to show like a house is just more than a house. And think of people who like me, like I have painted every single room in my house, and everything in here was like thoughtfully picked out and curated, and a lot of things I've carried with me through my life and have memories. And as someone whose parents were divorced, and I for years never felt like I had a true home. I lived out of a suitcase for 5 years. That is a very unsettling feeling. So I have such empathy for these people that have lost everything, because not having a home is just, it affects so many things. So this is what she said. Our home was so much more than a house. Every square inch of it was dreamt, designed, built, and crafted by my husband with intention and grace. The intention was to carve out a space in this world that could foster joy, peace, and paradise for anyone who stepped into it. And man, did it deliver on that promise. Not a day passed that we didn't vocally express our immense gratitude for it. I mean, and it goes on, but that is such a beautiful way to describe your home and your haven. And not just these people's homes, like their restaurants, their small businesses,
their livelihood,
their main streets, their town squares. It is unfathomable. What are some things you've seen? What's tugged on your heartstrings? What's kind of stood out to you in this?
Well, I wanted to point out on a serious note is that you mentioned Canada. We also had firefighters from Mexico. That's how neighbors should be treating each other. And they came to after the rhetoric that's been in the news, they could have easily said this,
right?
Like, go F yourself, America.
Yes.
But they didn't. They're like, hey, you're our neighbor, you're our friends. This is how we treat each other. And there was I'm not a fan of the way the mayor of LA handled this, but definitely not a fan of Trump and Elon's handling of this. Man, are we in a leadership void? But who knows? This could be a opportunity for Gavin Newsom to rise above the ashes and really become a great American leader, or anybody, a host of any other folks. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the blame game. And I also want to clarify that the really rich people had their own private fire departments and their houses did not burn down. So for those out there, just, nanny boo boo.
I didn't see so much of that. I know during the 2017 fires, the Kardashians had them. I've not seen as much this time around. That could be an algorithm thing. And this is not really an argument that I really want to go into, but it could also go into, we see these people on TV. It does not mean they are the like ultra wealthy.
Well, it's like when somebody gets cancer. Doesn't matter how much money they have. I mean, at the end of the day, they're human beings. And we all got to none of our houses are really in order, but we are so quick to point fingers at others. I guess it just makes us feel better.
Yeah. I feel like around here, one thing that I heard was, well, does California not do prescribed burns? And I'm kind of over like not commenting because
Yeah.
Republicans around here get to just like spew whatever they think on the internet. So I try to come with no emotion and some facts. Then I did some Googling before I responded because I like to have knowledge and education. And I found an article from KQED, which is the San Francisco NPR affiliate, back from October, and it was talking about how the U.S. forestry had stopped prescribed burns on federal land in October because they were fighting wildfires elsewhere. So resources, they did not have the resources to do prescribed burns on federal land in California this fall. In California, there are 2 times a year it's best to burn in the spring and it's best to burn in the fall. And that article said state agencies were doing prescribed burning and also tribal lands or tribes were doing their own prescribed burning on their lands. So then it goes to you have these different entities that own different pieces of property and they have jurisdiction over each one of them, so you can't just, hey, we're going to do the whole thing. Then you have, a record drought,
Yeah.
which goes into the brush. Los Angeles and Southern California is essentially a desert that they pump water to give vegetation and life. So it's just like kind of ripe for fires to happen. Yeah. Let's see what else. The Santa Ana winds are the worst they've been in years and years and years. So you and pun intended, you have these specific, all these factors that come together to make this perfect storm. Now, the whole rhetoric around there was not enough water, the reservoirs were full, they were at max capacity. There was 3 reservoirs, or there are 3 tanks that each held 1 million gallons apiece. And the topography of the Pacific Palisades, they have to pump water up there to then let it flow down. And so then you had fire hydrants are built, and a city water system is built to put out fires at a single house, maybe 2 houses, or a block at a time. The infrastructure was not built for wildfires. So then you had a wildfire plus private firefighters tapping into the fire hydrants. And then you had individual people like trying to protect their own homes. And within 24 hours, the article today, this was really cool. This was the Washington Post one. And it gave like tank 1 went out at this time. Tank 2 went out at this time. So it was taking you through the timeline. So by the time the Eaton fire sparked, Pacific Palisades had already been tapped out.
Yeah.
And the New York Times Daily podcast talking about how I don't know if it was a fire chief or just somebody with the department, he got the call to go to Eaton and couldn't even get there because of the traffic trying to get out of Pacific Palisades. So you just see I
can't imagine.
It's all these little things, and you can try to plan the best you can, but when you have factors that you've never worked through before, like these things just happen. And then you have this other thing of the DEI hires, and that is just
I don't get it. It's driving me nuts too.
Yeah, that is just, to me it becomes sinister, because essentially it's saying if you're not a straight white cis man, then you have, the only way you would have this job is for it to be given to you. And that's just misogyny and prejudice. And
yeah, and these black and brown people aren't qualified for these jobs, and they're making everything worse because of inefficiency. And
they must have just been given it to them.
They're just not. But that's in the face of, a lot of these cabinet appointments that are literally unqualified. So we just got to keep calling out the double standard while we can. But there was an expert I saw on the news. I don't know, what their credentials were, but I love the way they described it. They're like, no matter how much water they had, how much pressure they had, if everything was at full capacity in those two areas, it's not going to do a damn thing against a 100-mile-an-hour blowtorch.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. And
I mean, that's going to kick your ass. No matter what.
These comments online are like, there's no way a fire should jump an interstate. And I was like, I have just a few months ago, nobody knows. When you're doing a prescribed burn, you dig a fire lane through the dirt so that then once the burn gets to it, it will like snuff it out and there's nothing to burn. Steph's cousin, the one who has land beside us, he was hired this company to do a prescribed burn on a portion of his land. The wind changed in an instant, and it got out of hand and burned 6 acres that it wasn't supposed to.
Yeah.
And jumped the fire lanes, and then you've got to Steph's cousin he took the course so that like he can do a prescribed burn, and he's not doing them on large swaths. It's like little patches that nobody's going to come out and do a small patch for. And we've been down there with him, to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. But the number of factors that have to be in line for you to do a prescribed burn is like really, really cool. Something about like the rain or how dry it is. It also, the atmosphere has to be right so that the smoke rises, and because you don't want it to stay down. So like it's a crazy, crazy cool science. But what I'm trying to say in this really long narrative is everything can go right, but you can't control nature and it can still get out of hand. And yeah, if you're talking about 50, 70, 90, 100-mile-an-hour winds, there's nothing you can do. And then you don't have the air support to be able to provide that additional level of, I guess, support.
Yeah. So I would just say, in the face of all that, what I really just wanted to hammer is basically to call out Elon Musk for being such an a-hole. Let's just read this. Let me just read this. During a visit to a fire command center, Musk made inaccurate claims about water availability for firefighting efforts. Inaccurate claims, a lot of which came from, my understanding came from X, formerly known as Twitter.
All right. What about water availability? Was water availability? I understand that was like not an issue in Malibu. Is that correct?
Was it water?
Yeah.
So there was water. We have several reservoirs that encinos that we use a lot. Now, just an example, if we have one building burning, we could flow 1,000 gallons a minute on that one building with the hose lays that we put in to stop it. You can imagine 1,000 gallons per house we couldn't do, right? So the amount of water we're flowing, there really is no water system that's going to keep that pace. So we have to bring in water tenders, which are these big tank water tanks that, 2,500, 3,000 gallon trucks, and they'll come in. And that's what we have to do to compensate. So they park out there, do it. DWP did a great job. They brought in big water trucks for us, and we use them as basically mobile hydrants.
All right.
Right, and then we have our own agency as well that has water tenders.
Okay. My understanding is that like along the, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, in Malibu along the coast there was no shortage of water. In the Palisades there was a shortage of water at a certain point, or is that not accurate?
Well, we were flowing just an amount of water that the system couldn't overbear. That we're just overbearing, just because of how much water these firefighters were utilizing.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Thanks, guys.
I just think we should be calling this out. Now, I'm going to do the devil's advocate here, and I just want to give Gavin Newsom a little praise because he is deregulating. I mean, let's just acknowledge, I think, that the regulations in California, some of which are probably insane, like insanely too far left.
Okay.
Here's a point that may be above my pay grade, but may resonate with you. But so I feel like we have the right and the left so that we can have progress in the middle.
Okay.
That's how this, like the yin and the yang.
Mm-hmm.
So the left's pulling, let's say, for more regulation, right's pulling for deregulation. Somewhere in the middle, we should find common ground, and progress will spring from there. I mean, so where we're dealing with a climate in Washington where, Republicans, it would be very detrimental to their political career, to their reputation, to be caught having lunch with some Democrats. Let's say
Which is absurd.
AOC, for example, that would be like political suicide for some of these Republicans.
Which is part of the problem.
Exactly. So, this denigration of bipartisanship is really dangerous. And I just think this is a great opportunity to have constructive conversations. But I think I need to see retribution from leaders making inaccurate claims of water availability for firefighting efforts. We cannot, this cannot be tolerated, but they're using it, I feel like, as a form of control. So misinformation is a form of control. It's a form of getting attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's a form of dominating headlines and go, look, Elon Musk is out there fighting for us, but people aren't going to listen to the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. They're not going to dig deeper into this to figure it out. They're just going to go, yeah, that's who we elected, the ass kickers, going out there calling people on their shit, when in actuality, it's inaccurate claims that make, what progress can come from inaccuracy?
None.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to really point out. I think this is a great time for, I think, debate on small business regulations, building regulations, all types of regulations. But it's not going to happen. Progress is not going to happen through
I'll go to regulations, on utility companies. And I think it wasn't this fire. Maybe it was the 2017 one. I don't remember its name. Something that was holding up an old power line snapped and had not been cleaned up. And that was a cause of a fire. It's like, those are regulations we need upon our utility companies to ensure that there are inspections and that their equipment and power lines and things are safe and not live. And when new lines go up, old lines come down. I think that is sensible regulation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I just think it's let's have a conversation. The main point I'm trying to make here is that goal here, trying to maybe bridge some of this polarization gap. I mean, we're so at odds with each other. A great way to do that, a suggestion I have, is just let's first, can we try to find some gratitude that the other side exists? Like, we need the right to keep us from going too far left. The right needs the left from going too far right. I mean, these parties, when you get on the fringes of the far ends, is like, they're really a lot alike in terms of how radical they are, how dangerous they are. And, maybe this is a good place to start. Like, having conversations, trying to understand one another and our positions, coming from curiosity, not judgment, which we've mentioned on this podcast, I think many times, is a great place to start. But showing up at a fire command center to make inaccurate claims is just like, somebody needs to call this. Some people on the right need to hold their people to account. The Elon Musk, the Marjorie Taylor Greens. I mean, the shit that comes out of their mouth is so absurd. Well, we need to rise above.
Yes. And I think this part of it is this culture on the right thinking that admitting fault and admitting a mistake and a changing of mind is a sign of weakness. When I can't remember if I've said it on here before or not, to me, that is the ultimate sign of strength, is being able to say, oh, I was wrong. I have since learned, research, reflected, and my opinion has now changed. But I think that also comes from the curiosity over judgment, and there's a lack of that on the right. And also this culture of toxic masculinity on the right, that's this mansplaining and, me caveman, I'm right, I can never be wrong. And that fosters no good at all. So there's this.
I'm thinking that probably gripes your ass.
So, right,
it does.
Or we can't change the culture on the other side. I guess the only hope is to, where can we make small impacts within our community? It's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah. I think both sides need to call out the shit that's happening on their own sides that's ridiculous, like within their own parties and caucuses and town halls and all of it. We need to be like, man, this is a bunch of bullcrap. But I'm really just fed up with this kind of culture of disinformation. This economy of disinformation, these political cycles where disinformation is rampant. What was I thinking as I was driving the car about fact checking? Like, we're in a society right now where, like, people are demonizing fact checking. The cultural, the left-leaning bias of CNN is basically comes down to, I feel like, the fact that they fact check, on live television. If somebody gets on there and makes some bullshit claim, they're like, that's just not true. And that's, to everybody, that's like, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. You shouldn't be allowed to fact check. So, since when is it undemocratic to fact check? Am I bunny trailing here? We rabbit holing?
Maybe.
All right, you got anything more to say about this? Because I'm fired up about headlines. Is there any updates on the ski lift operator strike?
Oh, it was lifted.
They gave them their $2.
They gave them their $2 and other things. I believe Park City's back up to full capacity. But my PSA would be, if you're going to Utah and you're a skier, just go to Deer Valley, because they don't allow snowboarders.
Oh.
And it's a different owner. They're like, the mountains are close together, but it's Deer Valley is owned by a different parent company, so they were not affected by this to begin with.
I didn't realize you were so anti-snowboarder.
It's more, if you're on a ski-only mountain, everybody's going down the mountain the same. And as people who ski once a year, once every few years, it is really for our own safety and protection.
Yeah, because you get these flybys.
Yeah.
Of these crazy kids on the snowboards.
Yep.
All right, we ready to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break, wrap on the LA wildfires. I'm sure it will continue to, we'll get more information about how it started, what to do. But I think the big thing is coming, like all tragedy, coming together for the betterment of the future and extending kindness and empathy. I know in Keller Williams, people can contribute to KW Cares. Any realtor or non-realtor, you can contribute to the Realtor Relief Foundation. Those are two organizations that will get boots on the ground and directly impact. There's just a lot of negative information out there about the Red Cross and about how giving to that doesn't help people. So if you need organizations where you want to know that my money is going to go the furthest, those are good ones. I will say I'm on the committee for Alabama Realtors, for our foundation, which does the scholarship and provides relief. We have a meeting next week. I believe it'll probably be about, are we going to send relief funds from Alabama to California?
Love it.
So if you're a realtor and you have a realtor tag, that contributes to the Realtor Foundation. And one thing, we sent money for Milton and Helene, but at a certain point, like, money can only go so far. So we did a second donation, and we sent an 18-wheeler full of bottled water, because at that time people still didn't have running water.
Yeah.
So there's really cool ways that people are stepping up and contributing. So if you're a realtor or not, I believe you can contribute to those organizations that will provide relief in the communities that need it.
Yeah, love it. All right, so y'all give abundantly, and with that, we will take a break.
Okay.
All right, so headlines. First one I've got is special counsel report condemns Trump's criminal efforts to retain power in 2020. I've said this many times on this show about, I feel like his just continued denialism, election denialism, is something that is a big divider. But the special counsel's report, 130 pages. All right, so here is a very condensed overview of what's in this report.
Is this having to do with Georgia?
Well, there's pressure on state officials.
Okay.
So absolutely. Pressure on the vice president. There was a fraudulent electors plan. In this report, Jack Smith stressed the gravity of the crimes charged, the strength of the government's case, the merits of the prosecution, and said there is sufficient, in his estimation, there is sufficient evidence to obtain a conviction at trial. There would have been sufficient evidence to obtain a conviction. Of course, we know that Merrick Garland was not up to the moment and fell short and was just too slow. The government was way too slow to get this done. But I love Trump's response, okay? So instead of saying, he just says everything's phony baloney, but this is his exact words. Jack Smith is a lame brain.
Lame brain? He's
a lame brain prosecutor who failed to get the case tried before the election, which I won by a landslide. All right, so one of those statements is true. He failed to get the case tried before the election, which he should have done and could have done. And Trump did not win by a landslide. What say you?
Why do you think the ball was dropped so poorly on this? I mean, do you have any theories?
No, I mean, I just, I think that, I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I mean, I could say this from personal experience, that the wheels of justice move very, very slowly. But I think, they didn't really know how to handle this. They didn't know what was the best way to handle it, and who knows? I mean, we'd have to have a crystal ball to know how this would have really turned out. But we know the way it was handled just put gasoline on the fire of the Trump campaign and their rhetoric, and just, the witch hunt rhetoric and all these things.
I guess one lesson that I hope we, don't have to learn to then use in the future is, like, if you're coming after Trump, you better not miss. And so, like, if
the guy is so lucky. I mean, he's got Merrick Garland moving slow, which, who knows? Merrick Garland could be, we could look back at history, could look back on him and go, he was smart, because he just, in his heart, in his gut, felt that this was going to backfire on the Democratic Party, which it absolutely did. So who knows if he would have been tried and convicted, if Jack Smith is absolutely correct here, there was sufficient evidence to gain a conviction here, would that have been disqualifying? Would that have not caused, revolt among, his base? We don't know, but we do know that all of these criminal issues before Trump helped his campaign. All the challenges, all the rhetoric fueled his campaign. So I know that Americans, especially those on the right, are not going to read this report, and we're just going to continue with this narrative that, he won. Stop the steal. I would just like to put this to rest once and for all. And
yeah, like if like nothing's going to come out of it, then like it's not doing us any good, and it's only fueling their narrative of the witch hunt. And I think that's what I meant by, if you're going to go after Trump, like you better not miss.
Well,
otherwise, like he will like use it to his advantage.
Oh yeah, it's like we talked about in the first episode. All of this has worked in his favor, but I got sucked into, they were saying, here are the biggest outside the economy, here are the big factors that are going to sway this election and possibly lead to a Kamala landslide, which was, reproductive rights, democracy.
Mm-hmm.
So like 30% of the electorate was really concerned about democracy. And I go, oh shit, well, if you got 30% of those, 30% of women are going to get out and vote for reproductive rights. His ass is going to get kicked.
Yeah.
But I was shocked to learn that the fear surrounding our democracy was more on the right than the left, based on all this election denialism rhetoric and the stop the steal and all this stuff. And it just continues. So we'll see what happens after Trump leaves office and how many Republican leaders come out and say, I really knew it was wrong and I knew he didn't win, but I just couldn't come out and say it because I was afraid. I mean, all this is going to come out in the wash eventually, but right now it's doing nothing to help the left. So that first headline was CNN. I want to mention that because I know we've got a lot of CNN fans on the TikTok, and who knows if TikTok's going to be banned this Saturday or not. I don't think it is, because there was somebody who has a big stake in TikTok gave Trump $100 million. And so that's why Trump's a big fan. We're in this pay for play, political leadership era, the kleptocracy era in the United States. And so we'll see what happens there.
I'm like, keep TikTok. Can we just get rid of Facebook? It's the scourge.
God, it really is. And so here is...
Oh, can I go on a Facebook tangent real quick?
Can you do what?
Go on a Facebook tangent?
Oh, yeah. You want to hit Zuckerberg? Let's make this episode punching people in the face.
Okay, so I love that when millennials were graduating college and it was like, you better clean up your Facebook because managers and hiring staff are going to be looking, so you better like not have any pictures where you look drunk. Yet these boomers who were doing all the hiring are now like spewing conspiracy theories and taking selfies storming the Capitol. And it's like, y'all took our Facebook away from us and like made it terrible. So like, let's just get rid of it.
Yeah. All right. Here's my next headline. In deleted tweets, Trump's incoming AI and crypto czar argued Trump's January 6th rhetoric was not covered under the First Amendment. He said, and I quote, "Incitement is not protected." This man's name is David Sachs, for people that are looking to expand their knowledge on this. David Sachs went on to say what Trump did was absolutely outrageous, and I think it brought him to an ignoramus ignorantorious end in American politics. He will pay in the history books, if not in a court of law. Holy shit. So this is one of those things where I think people, if they were paying attention, because guess what? They're not paying attention, because guess what? The price of gas is still high. The price of eggs is still high. None of that's coming down with the flick of a light switch. The war in Ukraine, like all these Trump promises, is anybody else paying attention? He's backtracking.
Mhm.
He's backpedaling and all these, it's, don't expect that. It's not going to happen. This mass deportation is not going to happen. None of this shit that y'all voted for is really going to happen. But I think all you got to do is go back and look at these Trump loyalists, what they said a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago about
Mhm.
Trump. Even his own vice president comparing him to Hitler. How do you get to know somebody? How do you have that opinion of somebody and then drastically change it a few years later because it means that you are going to be able to elevate your status in society, both income and notoriety wise?
Yeah, I didn't
Power.
even think of it from a increase your status. I think of it as a like we don't want to be the next lawsuit that Trump files against. Because he's already filed one against ABC News and multiple other outlets. So is it for status? Is it for self-preservation? I don't know, but there's a lot of pandering going on.
Well, I mean, JD Vance is going to be the obvious nominee in 2028, unless, we don't know what's going to happen. A lot can happen between now and
Talk
then.
about a DEI hire.
Yeah. So he's like, well, I'll sleep with the enemy to be president. I'll buddy up. I'll cozy up next to Hitler to be president. That's what I see. But we don't have to take sound bites from the left. There's plenty on the right to condemn him. Ready? We're going to go to the next one?
Ignominious is the word you were trying to.
Which I think I pronounced that correctly the first try. I think the recording will show.
Ignominious. Deserving
ignoramus.
Ignominious.
I was saying it in the Greek.
Deserving or causing public disgrace or shame.
Yeah, that's David Sachs. That's his incoming AI and crypto czar. So those were from deleted tweets. So there's been a lot of deleted tweets and emails and a lot of this stuff from people that were on the right that are not Trump fans. And there is a lot of people on the right that are in leadership. I mean, the way that, I've heard some people, the left is saying, well, listen, this Trump second term has already been a shit show. The people on the right saying it's going really, really smooth in terms of, Speaker Johnson, first vote, got reelected as speaker, some of these other things with the appointments and all this. But Trump's called around and threatened to primary these sumbitches. And so that's why they're falling in line. All right, so let's move on to my next one. This is from the Daily Beast. So the first two were CNN. This is from the Daily Beast about CNN. CNN host Jake Tapper skewers Senator backing willing to lie AG nominee. So he's talking about Katie Britt backing Pam Bondi, who is an election denialismist. Do you want to Google denialismist to make sure that's a word? I believe it is. So let's hear what Tapper says here. So Jake said, talking about Pam Bondi, she spread baseless claims about widespread cheating by Democrats about fake ballots. That is partisan politics, because Katie Britt was saying that Pam Bondi is so nonpartisan. That is partisan politics. What she said in 2020, that is not justice. So you would think an attorney general, the highest law enforcement professional in the land, should be all about justice. Stealing an election and making up and spreading lies is not somebody. That just from an integrity standpoint, but not a rule. A rule of law standpoint, the whole thing. And then here was Britt's retort. She said, people want these agencies, these departments to actually work for the American people. Pam is committed to that. I think you will see that. Then Tapper responds, Well, but why would you think somebody who's willing to lie about the election results in Pennsylvania is going to restore integrity in the Justice Department the way that you're calling for it?
Valid.
And Britt says, I asked that question very directly of Pam Bondi with each and every nominee the answers that I have been given have satisfied me that they're going to move forward in the right direction. She added, so I'm sure she will have an opportunity to answer these questions before the American people and, will make a decision whether she's qualified or not. So she had an opportunity to go, listen, I don't agree. She could have at least said, I don't agree with Pam Bondi's statements, but I feel like I'm satisfied she's going to be a great attorney general. I mean, that would be like just base level.
Yeah.
And didn't do it. And it's really, really sad.
I think Katie's just a little Trump darling and likes how she has been, like into the Trump fold and is going to do whatever she needs to do to position herself in power for her future. And I get making strategic moves and aligning yourself and doing things. I'm not saying that strategy in your career and like wanting to get some shit done, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. The lack of integrity to me is a bad thing.
Yeah, I just don't understand. I mean, do we have to accept it? Do we have to accept this is as this new era of leadership that is not based on integrity or truth or standing up for what's right or the rule of law? It's really, really sad. But well, bless you.
Thank you. I tried to cover up my microphone. It might have just made it worse, though.
Oh my gosh, that was adorable. But I have promised to praise, to find good things to say about the right. I do, and I think you really disagree with me on this one, but I do think Trump's blustering about the hostages and the hell to pay. I mean, I might be able to get on that talking point that it's worked. I mean, nothing has worked up until this point, and now all of a sudden, Blinken's getting some damn traction with these hostages. I just, I'm with the tough talk, and then I'm also want to praise Katie Britt for her work with the Lincoln Riley Act and her commitment to get these criminal illegal aliens get their asses out of this country or in prison where they belong.
Okay, is that your final headline?
That was it. Let's talk about yours.
Okay. These were two things that were breaking news on my phone yesterday. There is now a federal suit against Alabama State Bill 129, which is the Alabama, what they're calling the anti-DEI bill, which says that if you are a university that receives federal funding, you cannot have any program, curriculum, whatever. The lawsuit challenges a new Alabama law that banned diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in public colleges, local school boards, and state agencies. This is a quote from AL.com. The law also placed restrictions on the teachings of what it defines as divisive concepts. It's some plaintiffs are students, and I think the ACLU of Alabama is also involved. This is cool. I will give it to our schools, journalism programs. There is an article about it from the Auburn Plainsman as well as the Crimson White.
War Eagle.
And I will say, as a Greek kid at Alabama and a Republican at the time, didn't love the Crimson White, but I will give it a nod for researching and putting out information that's not the most well received and may not be what's popular. And I would argue that's the role of journalists and news organizations. There is a picture. So this is from the Crimson White. This is an article from August talking about how the Black Student Union at the University of Alabama had to close. There's a picture showing the insignia like on the door has been removed, the office is locked, and the lights are turned off. And the university had permanently closed the UA Safe Zone, a former center that provided LGBTQ plus support and advocacy program on campus.
Jeez, I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, so that's the harm of this State Bill 129. And I'm really happy to see that people are fighting against it. Okay, this is from the ACLU of Alabama. Today, a group of Alabama students and educators in higher education filed a federal lawsuit challenging State Bill 129, a censorship bill that impedes their ability to teach, learn, and engage in public university classes and programs related to diverse viewpoints and topics.
You can always count on me to dumb things down. Okay, so I'm going to try to... this is the dummy's interpretation of what you're saying, or even the dummy's interpretation of this overall argument. I feel like the right is saying, like, listen, we're beyond racism. We don't need a safe zone for LGBTQ. We're more higher evolved than that. And so that's like deregulation, right? In my mind, we need to deregulate this stuff. We don't need programs to make sure that people from minority backgrounds get hired. We don't need regulation to make sure the environment doesn't get more and more polluted. But the fact of the matter is that human beings can't be trusted. That's why regulation exists. And so I think LGBTQ, correct me if I'm wrong, still need safe zones or still need to be protected. I mean, we can go back to our episode about the Prattville Pride Parade, but we can't count on human beings to naturally do the right thing, which is hire people based on their qualifications and not to harm or, verbally, physically, psychologically people that are different from us.
Yes, I agree in all that. But it removes programs where people that are other and different and are in the minority, they can, it's a safe zone to come together and have a place of reprieve and engage and feel seen and heard. Because when you walk in a room and you walk in every single room and you are different, like, you don't know and realize the wall and the defense you have up at all times. And a safe space is truly what it means. And it's hard to describe the feeling that when you walk in a space like that and you can let it all go. It's almost like your muscles have been tensed and you can finally breathe and relax.
So is it fair to say, because I feel like a lot of these people that are introducing this legislation and, really speaking out against DEI and LGBTQ, they're not DEI, they're not LGBTQ. They don't have any personal experience with what it's like. They don't have a history of slavery, or they don't know what it's like to worry about being disowned by your parents. I mean,
or just
is that not right?
Yeah, I mean, just being like other and different. And
they've never felt that. They've always been white and accepted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man, I'm really
let's say
liberal pills this morning.
Even for women, for years there's an organization in the realtor community, Women's Council of Realtors. It's because women needed a place that they could be involved and have a safe space together to engage and grow and learn and hold positions of leadership. I mean, so special interest groups are not new. Now, as let's take an organization like the National Association of Realtors. As women were allowed to hold positions and the doors were opened up for Black people to join and other minorities to join, yes, some of these programs may not have had one argument could be, well, they're not as important anymore. Doesn't mean that they lacked importance in the past, or just because you don't see that it's important doesn't mean that it's not to somebody else. And just because you don't see the importance, okay, so you don't get it. That's fine. Like,
I love it. I'm loving
sorry,
it.
I'm using my hands, but yeah, it's just. So one thing I do want to say on this, I'll be really interested to hear how this progresses. So, okay, the plaintiffs in the case include Alabama Public University faculty and students, as well as Alabama State Conference of the NAACP, and they are represented by the Legal Defense Fund, the ACLU of Alabama, and the Law Office of Arnold and Porter. So that was breaking news yesterday. The other breaking news that I want to hit on is House votes to ban transgender students from girls' sports. Subheadline is the new House made transgender students in sports one of its first priorities in 2025. The bill's path in the Senate is unclear. So the 119th Congress is delivering on what they promised to constituents, and people saying that trans people and gay people and women are overreacting. I would say this proves that we have not been overreacting. And this is not like ban from NCAA. This is a blanket ban of participating in all sports across the nation. So I take this as a blanket attack on trans people. It is a very small special interest. I believe it is another way of the right showing we are going for clickbait, we are going for headlines. We don't have an economic plan. We don't have a healthcare plan, but we are going to distract you by this.
Yeah, we're protecting society. We're protecting your kids. We're stopping the spread of this transgender disease that's going to infect everybody.
Right. And when you ban, they say, their claim is, well, we're protecting women. And it's like, okay, well, Mr. Old White Man, I don't need you to protect me. Like if women had a problem, women would be standing up against it. And it's mainly a lot of old white men that are doing it. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Many women that fight for trans rights in sports are other female athletes, and those are the ones we should be listening to. Also, it is harmful for all women because women that are seen to be more masculine, maybe tomboys, are already being attacked and misgendered, and it will lead to
hate crimes,
but discrimination against those women as well.
So we saw that in the Olympics.
Yes.
With the female fighter who was 100% female.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen on the Instagram, people are calling the fire chief, the head of the LA fire department, they're misgendering her as a man. And she is not a trans woman.
Wow.
I mean, it's sinister and it's ugly and it's hateful and
it's cruel. It's the politics of cruelty.
Yes.
I mean, we've gone from. I mean, there's still the politics of fear. That's all. The politics of fear has been the Republican playbook for a long, long time, for many, many decades. These issues are complicated, and like you said, the above my pay grade. I think that applies to.
But it's also a witch hunt on such a small, vulnerable population that deserves to be protected.
Exactly.
And I think we're so early on into this, and like there's not a large presence of trans kids in sports, so we don't have the data to know a lot of things about, like, you know, what happens like when they, you know, transition at a young age versus an older age, and how does that qualify them for getting scholarships and NCAA ruling? I mean, that's just, it's hard to know what's going to happen in the future. My biggest thing is sports are impactful in people's lives into making them a well-rounded human, and all kids deserve the opportunity to participate in sports if they choose.
Yeah. I think, it's going to be hard for us to get to a place of, having really constructive conversations when we're identifying people as being trans that are not, like there's people to this day that are just absolutely convinced that was a man in the ring with that female boxing athlete. And it's just, a crime against humanity. But,
these gender roles and these boxes, and the only way to be a woman is to look like the 1950s housewife, and why do you think every woman on Fox News is like blonde and made up and looks like they're part of a pageant? It's like, it's essentially saying you don't exist if you don't fit in this box that we think you should. And that's awful and dangerous and leads people to misgendering and calling biological women men. And the really, I know I've said it so many times, the word I have for it is it's sinister and hateful. Man, I started on a damper and I'm ending on one, and I'm sorry about that.
I like the passion, me.
I
like to see you get fired up.
Jason walked in today and was like, man, y'all are sports 24/7 all the time. And it's true, but they were so impactful in my life and were so impactful in Steph's life. And there's these stats that's like, I saw it yesterday, and I want to say like over 50% of female CEOs participated in sports at some level in their lifetime. So there's these things that are really, really important. And I'm for giving children access and opportunity, and all kids deserve to have that fulfillment. Think of what sports do for minority communities and for people of low income and people who get college educations because they received a sports scholarship. It's like the GI Bill. Doing things helped them get further in their life. And I'm just a huge proponent of it. There was an ESPN documentary made a few years ago. It was about following these trans families, and it was elementary age trans girls wanting to participate in the rec soccer league. And they're just like, our friends play soccer and I want to play soccer. And if I can't play the same sport as them, then my friends are doing this communal thing together and I don't get to participate. And now not only do I have this otherness in one way, but we had sport as something we shared. Now in this society, I'm being even more told you are other, you are not important, and being ostracized. Think of what that does to a child. That's why that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah. Seek to understand, these people that criticize it, that are so fired up, have probably never watched these programs or read articles about it or sat with somebody, a trans mom, over coffee or lunch and go, what are your challenges? What is your child going through? It's really sad, but to me, it's the politicization of everything. Everything. Now it's in sports.
Any closing words for this week, man? It was a doozy.
I don't know.
Have you been watching any of the Senate hearings on Hegseth? They seem to be ripping him a new one.
You know, I just glimpses. I mean, again, like last night, I honestly was really fighting the urge to put CNN on, and I actually just put it on SEC basketball, watched the Auburn Mississippi State game, and just ignored it. I did catch a little bit.
It's
of
Auburn
it.
season.
Yeah, I did want to. This is how I really wanted to close, but that Auburn is number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama's number 4.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to point that out.
Auburn, one of the best defenses in the country, and it is their season. Alabama is not going to get far in the tournament if our defense does not shape up.
Yeah. So I saw enough of the Hegseth to know what was going on and what was, happening. This is an opportunity, I think, Sloan, to talk about how, I don't think the Democrats helped themselves. Tim Kaine jumping on Hegseth's ass. I saw that about him committing adultery, being a serial adulterer, and fathering kids out of wedlock.
I loved it. Guess what? Rules of engagement have changed.
Yeah.
They want to act a fool. Tim Kaine, rain fucking fire.
But they see the right seized on that, and I think the right seizing on that resonates more with the American people than the fact that this guy is a scumbag.
Right.
I don't know.
If anybody wants to watch it on C-SPAN, you can watch all 4 hours and 24 minutes of it.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of stuff he didn't know, a lot of things he couldn't answer.
Oh, like the Tammy Duckworth?
Yeah.
Can you name the ASEAN?
Yeah.
And, I'm like, I've never heard of it, but I'm also not.
Yeah, it's not my job
for
to know.
that position.
Yeah, it's just going to be, all these people are going to get confirmed, and we'll just see how it goes. I think what we're just going to do from week to week is, analyze these headlines and talking points and give our takes on it, and hopefully inspire people to just question, what they're seeing, what they're reading, and just enough to pull back a couple more layers and go, okay, let me see what this person really had to say,
right,
or that person really had to say, or what's an eyewitness account, things of that nature. But I know, like, if you're totally innocent, you don't pay somebody hush money. If you're
right,
totally innocent or honest or a person of integrity, you don't mind being fact checked. If you're totally innocent and in the right, then you don't fight to have special counsel reports redacted or locked away, ethics reports locked away. You have I think, very strong desire for transparency. And you just see this, they have a very strong, I see the right's desire to be very strong on misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theories, and not reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to continue to do this.
Yep.
So
yep.
We'll see where it leads, but I'm sure next week we'll have more bad news to report.
Right. I do want to close on one thing. I'm so excited. This Friday, there is a new women's basketball league that started. It's called Unrivaled. It is a 3-on-3 league. It was created by 2 current WNBA players to supplement their WNBA income, as well as not, so they don't have to play overseas, face potentially what Brittany Griner faced. But also when players would go overseas in the off season, like they would just go dark. So they would lose like branding awareness and opportunities. So that begins this Friday. It was announced that all games are going to be aired on TNT and their affiliates. With an awesome lineup of analysts and play callers and in-studio analysts as well. It is played in Miami. It is going to be awesome. I can't wait.
Are you going to go to one of these games?
We're going to try, but
All right.
they expensive.
Who knows? Maybe by then there'll be a Raise Red, Living Blue, like podcast party in Miami, post or pre-game.
Unrivaled. Check it out. This Friday, TNT. Okay, that's all. Women in sports. Everyone watches women's sports. Thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time.